Ladies and gentlemen, I am so incredibly excited to say that the PC gaming stagnation is finally over. Things are kicking off, starting with brand new gaming CPUs from both Intel and AMD Ryzen. We're going to kick off with the Ryzen ones. The Ryzen ones were announced a few days ago on stage by Lisa Su herself. This is going to be the 9000 range, starting from the 9600X, which is a 6-core chip, all the way up to the 9950X, which is 16. Part of me is a little bit disappointed that the core count hasn't increased, but obviously for gaming, we didn't need more cores. I mean, if you actually want to see the difference that cores make for gaming, we made this video. You can find it in the top right corner of your screen. The TDP has actually decreased slightly on some of the chips as well, which is nice, so you won't need such high-end cooling. Your PCs run quieter. And in terms of performance, you're getting 16% better IPC, which is probably going to turn into maybe like an average of like 10 to 15% better gaming performance. But then this is like with an RTX 4090 at 1080p anyway. So how much difference this will actually make is something we'll be testing a little bit later. But I actually want to talk about Intel first. We'll get to the AMD motherboards in just a second. As I say, all of the motherboards we're going to be covering in this video. It is going to be pretty exciting. But yes, we're going to start with Intel actually, because they've got their brand new Arrow Lake CPU motherboards here, and they're being a little bit elusive about it. But as you can see at the ASRock booth, we've got loads of boards. So let me show you all of the details that I can right after a short word from this video's sponsor. Deepcool's Mystique All-in-One is here, and it brings stunning looks, functionality and performance. This epic new cooler packs a 2.8-inch IPS display, allowing you to see your CPU temperatures, speeds and pump information, or, if you're a bit more flamboyant, playback images and GIFs to really make your PC stand out. The Mystique is perfect for both high-wattage Intel and AMD CPUs, with up to 360mm radiator sizes, performance static pressure fans, and Deepcool's awesome 5th generation water pump. Learn more today with the link down below. So yes, SitRep, what do we actually know? Well, clearly the next gen CPUs are coming, and they are going to be coming, it says here, in the second half of 2024. And obviously we're going to be starting with a high-end first, but it's nice that ASRock have got so many different motherboards on display here. I mean, how many, if I do a quick maths, 11 different Intel motherboards here. So this is pretty much the full range. And it starts with a Pro RS, which is actually now like a white motherboard, which is pretty cool. Traditionally, if you're going for like a whiter motherboard, you usually have to pay a little bit extra money. So it's nice to see that they've got more budget-friendly options. But the main difference really between this generation and the previous one is actually with PCIe Gen 5. So you're now getting PCIe Gen 5 16X on the PCIe slot, and you're also getting 4X. I had to double check that. You're getting 4X on both the SSD and then 16X on the PCIe Gen slot. So this means like it's very, very future-proof, right? Because you're obviously getting a next-gen SSD and a next-gen graphics card. So you're not going to have to worry about upgrading your motherboard anytime soon. Obviously, it does look as if it is a new socket, and they definitely can't tell me what the new socket is, right? They're keeping stum about it. They've got strict instructions from Intel. It's all under embargo. But when you look at the motherboard, it does actually say underneath LGA 18XX. So it's not really a massive surprise what it's going to be called. But yes, it's definitely very interesting to see all of these on this wall here. I am looking forward to when we can actually get more features that aren't under embargo, sadly. ASRock are definitely telling us all that they can, but that's still a little bit limited. But obviously things like Wi-Fi 7, better I/O. I mean, the chipset should be faster as well with more bandwidth, so you're going to have extra features and things. But in terms of the core count of the CPUs, we don't know this. We don't know like power consumption. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I will say as well that one of the other changes that ASRock is actually making is that Taichi is now a range, whereas before it was the Taichi and the Taichi Lite. They've now actually got 5 different Taichi motherboards. But then you've got the OCF Cam 2 that has a memory module actually that aims to lower latency, but we'll show you this a little bit later at the MSI booth. And then the original Taichi that I really like the look of actually, because it's almost like a little bit spacey, it's a little bit Astro, but then again I suppose cogs are a little bit cyberpunk, so maybe not. But as I say, I promised you motherboards, so motherboards you shall have. And we're now at the new AMD section, looking at X870 and X870E, and we know more about this, which is good. And I think the main takeaway actually is obviously that the socket is the same, so you can upgrade without buying one of these if you have a 7000 chip. And they're supporting this, I think, into 2027 and beyond. Obviously what that means, whether that means they're going to bring out loads of chips or just maybe like a couple like they're doing with the new 5000 series that's still coming out. And I think the main takeaway actually that I would take is that with the previous generation you had to go for the extreme, the E version, to get PCIe Gen 5 on both the 16X slot and the PCIe SSD, whereas now, just like Intel, you get that on both the SSD and the graphics card. So very future-proof, regardless of whether you're buying a powerful graphics card now or into the future. Same with the SSD, it's supported, you won't have to upgrade, which is great. The other main main feature that AMD are actually touting on this generation is that you get 2 USB 4 ports across the whole range, which is nice. I'm not sure how many people actually have USB 4 devices and how useful this is going to be, because obviously it's for like really fast storage devices and things like that. But unless you have a way of actually like routing your graphics card into the motherboard, you're probably not going to be doing external displays unless there's a way of actually routing it within the board itself. But then in theory, that could lose a little bit of performance. So not entirely sure how useful that's going to be. But again, future-proof, high-end features. If you want like, well, a more affordable motherboard, you're going to have to wait a little bit for the B series that will inevitably come like, what, a few months after launch or something like that. But I don't want this to be the ASRock video. I want this to be the motherboard video. So let's have a look at what else we've got. But that was what we've got over at the ASRock booth. But I want to transition now as smoothly as possible into ASUS. But I actually want you to see the amount of people that are here, because it's quite literally insane, and trying to get anywhere in this show is difficult, especially when you've got new products and things and people are trying to swarm around them and stuff. But ASUS have got a lot on offer, but for some reason, like, only one motherboard. But if I was a new ROG motherboard, where would I be hiding? In plain sight. This is the next generation Intel motherboard. You see what I mean? They're being very tight-lipped. And it says don't touch on it. And I imagine if I touched it, they'd get very upset. But yes, you can clearly see this is going to be one of the top-end boards. It says Maximus on it, so I mean, I think it's safe to say it's going to be a ROG Maximus motherboard. Very, very high-end here. You've got this full plate on the top as well, but there's not really that much else information on it, which is why we started at ASRock. So that was the very insightful and very clear ROG Intel motherboard. That was actually reverse connector, and I would show you that. And I did ask, and he went,
no, really, don't touch it.
Instead, we can come over to the tough area where we do actually have the next generation 8X70 motherboard. And obviously this is one of the tough boards. It looks very bare bones though. I'm not sure if this is quite final or not, because it looks a little bit empty around the side. Maybe this is just one of the ways of obviously like making it a little bit more affordable. This is an X870E, but again, not really too much more we can say on this other than the fact that, again, we have that PCI Gen 5 support on both the SSD and for the top slot and the dual USB 4. But everything else remains a mystery. And the fact that I can't, I mean, there you go, I've touched it.
I've broken the rules.
The fact that I can't actually pick it up and show you is a little bit of a shame, but MSI is over there as well. So let's go show you what they've got. Well, I realize at this point that this video will mainly be me showing you pictures of motherboards on a wall. So to try and give you some more insight, let's actually talk about upgrading your gaming PC and when you should do it, whether it's worth waiting for these new components. And obviously with the new AMD chips, right, they're coming in July. But as is always the case with the new AMD chips, as we've seen, the new chipset, the new platform is going to be X870. And this is going to be more expensive than the B series. So you're going to have to wait a couple of months for those to come out. The chips will be very expensive and they'll be at their full RRP. I mean, for reference, I bought one of the 7800 X3Ds at launch, and that was on a sale price with a discount code for about £450. And it was only a few months later that it dropped down to around about 390. So while all of this hardware obviously is very exciting, whether it's going to be worth investing day one, if you know already that's what you're going to do, obviously then yes, but you are going to be paying that early adopters tax. And the other thing as well is that until Intel have actually shown their hand, because this is like a whole new platform for them, and they have motherboards that you are going to be able to upgrade, there's extra features and things that we haven't actually learned about yet. I think it's fair to say that we still don't really know what the best platform is going to be. It's safe to assume that obviously AMD is going to be more power efficient than Intel. I have a feeling Intel is going to be talking a lot more about AI in their chips, so maybe there even be like an NPU in their Arrow Lake processors or something like that. Whether that's actually that interesting to gamers, I'm not entirely sure. Oh, but it's just tricky. I feel like AMD, for me personally, have definitely they've definitely won the previous generation with their chips, and I think if you're building a gaming PC today, there's some really exciting offerings from AMD, especially things like the 7600. But if the IPC is that much better, and 6 cores, as we know, is still fantastic for gaming, then that 9600X, I think it's going to be really appealing, especially bear in mind that has a TDP of 65 watts. So again, you're not going to need an expensive cooler, or if you get one in the box, then obviously you could just use that and save yourself a whole bunch of money. Or even more unbelievably, I'm pleased to say we actually made it to the MSI section, and I'm afraid to say, ASUS, your effort was pretty poor, because look, I can touch them. No one is screaming at me. Actually, this is part of the new MSI Pro series. Pro's been out for a while, but you can see there's a complete redesign here. So it's actually a little bit more built up. We also have a lot more white and silver, similar to what ASRock had actually, which is quite interesting. But yes, this is the next generation of Intel from MSI in my hands. They've got a few different innovations as well, but they're pretty much all about building a PC. But let's see, right, if I can actually open this up with one hand. So here we have quick, yes? quick release, look, for the SSD. There it is. So you've actually got some new grooves on it, so it should slide in a little bit easier. Before you had these two little pins and they had to get it to line up. It was doable, but it wasn't as quick as it could be, whereas now you can do it with one hand. You also have another piece on the bottom as well. If I'm careful, should remove, and there you can see, look, we have the motherboard, very large heatsink, loads of M.2 here. Obviously, we saw this on the previous generation as well, but pretty much if you're building a gaming PC, or any PC really, in 2024 and beyond, you're going to be having mainly M.2 drives, no hard drives or standard SSDs, unless of course you're building them from a prior system. But yes, there's not really too much more to say really about the next generation of Intel, other than that they're coming. But they also have a few different innovations as well. You'd think this was a new GPU, but actually this is for Gen 5 SSDs. You can whack them in there. You've got like a toolless system, which is quite neat, almost like a NAS. Look, they come out. There you go, you've got a card that you can actually plug into these motherboards if you want even more SSDs with better cooling them, because obviously cooling Gen 5 SSDs is actually pretty difficult. But then they also have a few different new innovations as well around memory, and we know that we like low latency memory when it comes to gaming PCs, and this is one of the new Project Zero boards. But you may notice that something is missing on this motherboard. It's the fact that the RAM, there's no RAM slots, but this can be released with one of their quick release systems, and then you have a heatsink here for cooling. But you've got this different sort of memory now. So Kingston is actually supplying like one of their Fury Impact modules for this. But the idea is essentially to have lower profile memory that takes up less room, so you've got more clearance for other parts, but also higher capacity, more dense, I suppose is the right word, but also crucially and fundamentally lower latency. So we can have those really fast DDR5 speeds, but then lower latency. And these are hot swappable as well. I mean, you will have to unscrew it, but it's not something that's going to be particularly difficult. There is also an alternative way of doing that. This one's glued down, but you can actually see they've got their mini QDIMM here that essentially tries to combine 4 slots into 2. So maybe in the future, memory is going to be different. So instead of having those really large modules, we go for something else. And I kind of get it on the Project Zero motherboard actually, because if you think you can actually put it all behind that heatsink and have it completely clean and clear, that definitely makes sense. But whether people are going to want to either change to the new system, especially if you've already bought DDR5, I don't think so. I guess you're going to have different SKUs, maybe like the same thing, one with the normal slots and one with these, but it's all like a little bit TBC, to be confirmed. Very, very interesting. Let's see if we can grab a look at the AMD boards. And then as if by magic, through the power of editing, we're at the AMD boards. To finish up, we've got the Tomahawk Wi-Fi and then the Pro X870. So very similar in terms of design. Again, dual USB 4 on that. And then we have the Tomahawk here as well. I really like this one actually. This is Tomahawk, but look at the sort of neon effect we've got going on here. It's like a sort of lime green effect. I'd say actually if you're building a gaming PC, this almost looks like it's got RGB without having RGB on it. I mean, it probably does have RGB on it, to be fair. You get what I mean. It looks really, really impressive actually. You can see loads of I/O on here. We've actually got 2 USB 4 and then an extra C on this one. It looks like we've got 5 gig LAN on this as well, which is pretty cool. Wi-Fi 7, and these now have the sort of quick install Wi-Fi antenna, so you just literally pop those in. But definitely a lot of stuff to talk about, but not as much as I'd like. As we start to test these boards, July is not very far away. We'll be getting them in, and we'll be doing CPU benchmarking and actually looking at these new features and seeing whether they actually offer anything over the previous generation, and essentially when it comes to cost as well, whether the cost is right, whether it's too high, availability of the previous boards, a lot of stuff to go through. So if you do want to watch that, then get subscribed, like this video if you've enjoyed it, and if you do want to see current pricing on this MSI build that we did a few months ago, that's awesome. You can find that listed down below with our affiliate links. And while you're down there, why not give your PC a makeover with Deepcool's new Mystique All-in-One. This incredible cooler is ideal for both Intel and AMD CPUs and pairs stunning looks with powerhouse performance. Deepcool's new pump can run under 21 dB for near silent operation, and paired with their newly redesigned copper cold plate, heat transfer is even more efficient. So get your GIFs and your GIFs ready. There's a screen coming to a cooler near you. Learn more today with the link down below. But thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.